Hello and welcome to Thinkpod, powered by the FII Institute. I'm your host, Mark Barton, and for over 2 decades, I've been at the forefront of global conversations on the issues that matter the most. In this series, I'll be meeting with the leaders who are rising to tackle the grand challenges that face humanity right now. Together, we'll be discussing the radical ideas and transformative solutions that'll benefit both people and planet. This episode, I'm joined by Dr. Leyla Acaroglu, founder and chief disruptor of the Unschool of Disruptive Design and a UNEP champion of the Earth. We learn what school and university doesn't teach us and how embracing systems thinking could be the way to driving development. Leyla, thank you very much for joining me today. Doctor of Change, the head's gonna grow with each one. Let's do it. Doctor of Change, creative boundary pusher, sustainability provocateur, and cultural provocateur. This is my favorite, synapse. How does the head stay in shape? How do you stay grounded? Because it's incredible what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a normal human who just has a deep passion for the planet and for people. And I don't know how I got to be so lucky to have this career and use creativity as a catalyst for change, but it's taken me on many journeys. So yeah, I get to meet and work with all types of people. I think that really helps me just be connected to what I'm doing. And like everyone, have my good and bad days and whatnot.
Are you constantly disrupting? Is it a thought process? Is it what is to be a disruptor and why?
Yeah.
I think creative rebel.
I like to mess with things.
Yeah, is that what
but
it
with
is?
Intention,
like mess with things and blow them up?
No, with intention. So disruption is not about like making the most noise or causing the most chaos. It's actually about using intent to transform the way things are. So it's about having integrity and intent and understanding the system. You can make a mess. That's not the goal. The goal is to have intent to see a different outcome. And the disruption, therefore, is about having agency to identify what resources and power you have as an individual. If you're in a slum in India or if you're in a boardroom in New York, you have a different sphere of influence. However, you matter just as much as anybody else in affecting change in the world that you live in and the communities that you speak to and the choices that you make and the way you lead through example and action. So I don't believe that there's anyone who has more value than others in the system. It's just that some people are more effective at exerting their power and influence to the detriment of others and some to the positive. And that's often because the motivation that they have is self-interest versus collective outcome. Now, of course, we all need to look after ourselves, make sure, we've got our food, safety, security, all of those things met. But at the same time, no one is an island. Everything is interconnected. We are absolutely dependent on nature. We cannot avoid it. We are all made of the same molecular structures as vegetables that we put in our bodies every day. I always say to people, if you don't believe that you have an interdependent relationship with nature, you should hold your breath for 60 seconds and see what happens. Because we are literally beings of the earth. And therefore, we have an incredible imperative, but also opportunity to become a restorative and regenerative force on the planet. With all of our technologies and smarts and capabilities, it would be so sad if the history of humanity in the future was that we destroyed ourselves versus we were able to actually live harmoniously on the only known life-sustaining planet in the entire universe.
My first experience of you was a video after you were awarded the UNEP champion of the Earth. And I watched this video of you on a beach and you explained the sort of the moment where it all sort of went into place. And you've done TED Talks in 2013, 1.5 million views. Where do you get this energy? Does that come from the passion?
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting you asked that. I think about this a lot because I do seem to have a boundless energy for this stuff. Yeah. I can be so exhausted, be jet lagged, and then get on a stage and for the 45 minutes be like, completely energized, get off stage and be like, I'm going to die. But it
so
really is.
It's the topic.
It's like a life force. I am so passionate about it and not in a disgenuine way. Like when I figured out that everything in nature is interconnected, including myself, and that I am part of this big system called planet Earth and what a joy and mystery it is to be alive, that really, I guess, kind of transformed my entire perspective. And so, yeah, it's like a kind of energy force unto itself to just be deeply connected to a purpose that I see is about us transforming the way humans live on the planet so that we become regenerative rather than the current trajectory, which is destructive. Yeah. And so I just, it's like, it gives me goosebumps talking about it. I'm so super excited about helping others see the future as well.
You did a great TED Talk. I read a book Talk Like TED, Carmine Gallo, and the essence of it seemed to be passion. You've got to be passionate if you want to succeed as a communicator, as a business person. Would you say that's the essence, passion?
Yeah, I think passion is a transformative language.
Yes.
Actually, when I was doing my PhD research, I was trying to understand what it is that catalyzes change, both within organizations or in an academic setting. And what I kind of uncovered was that change is about transformation and metamorphosis, and you need different ingredients for that. But for sure, you need energy and enthusiasm and creativity, and these are all connected to this same kind of space of, as you say, passion, because often we're passionate about things that we desire or that we want, or we want to see something different, or we're excited by possibility, and they're all part of that creative, forward-thinking, open-minded states that we often get in.
One of the units of the disruptive design method, which we'll break down so everyone understands, is language, influence, and effect. And I love this. You discover how to master language and storytelling. Just explain how important language and storytelling is and the importance of mastering it.
Yeah, so humans are, I believe, uniquely separate from other species because of language, because we developed language to express emotions, this is my theory, and that we then use language to illustrate the world between each other. And, I'm a big fan of someone called Buckminster Fuller. He's long dead. He was a pioneer of sustainability and design. And he said something to the effect of we're able to learn from the dead and speak to the future because of language. And it's so powerful and beautiful. And for me, language is about framing and narrative building. So framing is the concept of how words has associations in our mind, and then therefore will actually determine how we perceive something, whether we like it or don't. There's this big argument about climate change. The concept of climate change was constructed as a frame to make it sound less scary. This was exposed by the kind of godfather of framing, George Lakoff. And essentially, the greenhouse effect is a far better definition of what's happening.
Yes.
And climate change doesn't sound as scary as global warming. So you see, framing can create different emotional states and responses. And I believe that when it comes to things like sustainability or the environmental crises we have, partly one of the big issues of disassociation is that we use fear framing, and fear is a cognitive disabler. When I'm scared of spiders, I'm Australian, they all kill you there. And so when I even imagine a spider, I'm immediately petrified, and I don't necessarily want to engage with whatever that is. So if we perpetually talk about planetary challenges without also talking about solutions, then we frame the narrative as negative.
Yes.
And people avoid it and they disassociate. And that's a cycle we've seen for the last 20 years. So a lot of my work is to help bring the science, bring the information out in a way that helps people think differently and creatively about the challenges, because I truly believe humanity can solve the issues in front of us. We've done it many times before. We just need enough minds, creative minds and influence to help really catalyze that.
And hence we have this disruptive design method. Explain what it is, and to those who really might not have thought this through, why does design matter? That word design, why is it so important?
Great question. So every single thing is designed. The whole problem that we face as humans is that we terraformed the planet. We go and take materials from nature, transform them into usable goods, and then waste them. It's that linear system that is driven by design, designed to meet our desires of, being warm and looking good and having technology and eating food. These are all fantastic things that we've managed to solve for, and we've designed solutions that have helped enable our species just completely do incredible things, but at a cost. And that cost has been to the planet because we extract resources at a faster rate than nature can replenish them, and also in the pollutions and issues that we've created at the end of life, whether it be air pollution or solid waste. So that cycle needs to be disrupted, and that status quo of exploitation in the economy needs to be completely reworked. So some of the propositions we have now is the circular economy. We have other ideas coming out of Kate Raworth from Oxford with the donut economy, and these different models are still meeting human needs, growing business, creating innovation and technology, but with the planet at the table. Because we have no future unless we have the resources that nature provides us to sustain all of life, not just our own. So the disruptive design method is essentially a process of exploring complex systemic issues using an iterative approach of creative development. So it has 3 phases, and it's based off a construction metaphor. So think scaffolding, when you build a building, you need to put an exoskeleton so the building doesn't fall down. But once it's built, you take the scaffolding off. So first we mine a problem. In the mining phase, this is where we're seeking out information and we're suspending the need to solve. Essentially, a lot of people approach a problem with the same thinking that led to them. The problem being, created in the beginning. And Einstein explained this is a really terrible way of actually solving problems. So I want people to basically explore all of the facets of the issue that they're trying to address and basically take the problem on a date. Be curious and ask it questions. When we suspend the need to solve, when we exist in a kind of more curious state, we have a completely different mindset. We're open to new ideas and we'll absorb data and information that previously wasn't there. I find a lot of people approach a problem assuming they understand it, and therefore it limits their perspective and capacity to solve it in different ways. So in the mining phase, we seek out information, we get these little pieces, and then we bring them up to the surface, and that's when we move into the landscaping phase, where essentially, like being in an airplane or a bird, you get that different perspective, that whole kind of, landscaped view. And here we start to put the pieces together using the critical tool of systems thinking, systems mapping. And this is where we've taken all of those ferreted out pieces and we start to put them together to understand where their dynamics are happening within the system and where we can make an intervention. Now, this is critical. There is no point trying to solve a problem if you don't have the agency to affect change. So a lot of people, they say, the solution is education or policy interventions. I call these the bookend of innovation and the bookend of change. Now, unfortunately, not all of us work in education. Not all of us work in policy. So it's pointless to deflect responsibility or agency out to these parts.
Agency is you.
Your individual ability to make change in the world. We all have it. And over time, we can expand our sphere of influence to have more and greater impact on the world around us. But so by relying on these two elements of social change, we essentially deflect responsibility away from us being able to take action immediately within our world, within our business, within our sphere of influence to affect change. So it's about identifying within that complex system the agency an area of intervention that you can affect change within. Then, once you've landscaped, identified, you can then build a solution that is the right fit to the problem within your resource set and sphere of influence. So it's an activation code rather than exploring a problem and then saying, wouldn't it be nice if we had more access to healthcare or if we had more solutions to climate change? It is literally about finding the agency for an individual within a complex, ever-changing system to create a solution that they have some sort of control
And on
over.
the systems side, I love the idea of these interventions. When and how should one intervene in the system?
Yeah, so this really is a million-dollar question because every system is different.
Yeah.
It's like the infinite possibilities of the universe. And so there is, of course, theories of intervention. I believe that on a product level, so if you're designing a product that's going to have an impact on the planet, on people, then you should always intervene at the point of functionality. Like, why does something exist? It exists to functionally deliver value to someone. So how could you transform that so that you deliver that with the least impact and the most effect? Whereas if you're designing a system of social change or communication or something, then you're going to have a different kind of locus of influence and therefore point of intervention. And that's why we do the mining, to understand that dynamics. Because if I said to you, the best place is to always intervene at blah, 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 it doesn't always apply to the context. That's why we use a systems mindset. But I will say there is this theory in systems thinking called the iceberg model, which is that most of us only see the tip of the iceberg, the most obvious part of the system, when, the weight of the system is actually under the water. And so this is, again, that mining concept. Yeah. What the iceberg model says is that the events that we see are fed by patterns that are fed by structures that are actually influenced by a human's mental models. So our perception influences how we create the world. And back to the question you asked about design, I believe that we design the world and the world designs us. We're in this dynamic relationship where, we created, smartphones and all of this kind of technology, which has then physically altered our bodies. I don't know if you remember with the old cell phones, the Nokias, they were worried our thumbs were getting longer.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, now we have this thing called tech neck, where people's bodies are actually changing as a result of them using technology. So that's just a really basic idea of how the designed world influences us and our physical form. But imagine how much it's affecting us cognitively and how therefore it's affecting our perceptions, our values, and ultimately how we operate in society. So To really make change, we need to redesign everything.
Is there a way for us to practice systems thinking?
Oh, yeah. Cool. So systems thinking is really like about understanding relationships and connections. And this is very intuitive for most humans. However, our education system really encourages us to become linear and reductive thinkers because it fits within the old model, the Newtonian model of the world being a mechanical machine that can be controlled, which is not the case. And so we have to undo the damage of this thinking, which is why I created the Unschool. And so systems thinking is about identifying relationships. So first thing you can do is identify 3 systems that are around you and start to think about how they're connected to other systems. Like we're sitting in a studio, there's lights. Those lights would not be powered if it weren't for an electrical system. And that electrical system not only requires the transmission of energy to this point through wires and through all sorts of other things, but it requires an entire industry to extract materials, process them, transform them. And this kind of thinking helps you basically get an expanded perspective rather than a contracted. And that contracted perspective, the siloed and linear and reductive thinking, is really what limits so much of our potential to solve some of these big challenges that we face. So thinking in systems daily, looking for relationships versus the obvious parts, and thinking, how is this affecting me? And how is my thoughts or perceptions affecting those around me?
On those big challenges, complex challenges such as the SDGs, how does this methodology help us tackle the SDGs?
Yeah, so the Sustainable Development Goals,
yes.
The big challenges in front of us that we need to address, whether it be protecting our oceans or solving climate change. Any problem essentially holds its own solution. If you think about it, it's like the fact that any part of nature has all of the elements for survival connected to the other parts. Like nature is a regenerative system. And so when I think about any of the SDGs, I think immediately, well, what are the relationships that have created the problem? And what are the bright spots within that problem set that can be used to help alleviate it? Because within any problem, there's always elements of solutions. So within climate change, we know one of the main solutions is to rehabilitate nature so that nature can get back to its state of homeostasis or balance, which is what all living things try to achieve, our bodies and the whole planet as a whole. So obviously drawing down carbon as quickly as possible. There's an amazing book called Drawdown that actually explains a lot of their strategies, whether that be protecting our oceans. It's not just planting trees. In fact, one of the quickest ways we can reduce methane emissions, which is a 25 times more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, is actually getting organic waste out of landfill. So eliminating food waste from our homes, from our restaurants, ensuring that they go to biodigesters. Like there's technological solutions that fit within these environmental solutions too. For me, the SDGs are all interconnected because everything is. So you can't fix climate change without fixing biodiversity. You can't create an equal and safe society for all of us if we continue to have inequality built into our supply chains. So for me, one of the biggest points of like transformation right now is business. You know, we all need things. Doesn't matter how wealthy or poor we are. We all buy stuff. We all participate in the economy. And a lot of the choices that we have are dictated by people making decisions about the market and what should be available and technology. And those people have the opportunity to transform the entire economy so that goods and services are produced not only in ethical and sustainable ways, but that we eliminate waste from our entire system. Waste is the most insane concept. We are the only species that create this concept of something that has no value, right? In nature, if something dies, it is the building blocks for new life. So that model is what we're trying to build into all of our business solutions with the circular economy and with sustainable design and all of these other strategies. So for me, the disruptive design method is a creative tool that helps drive that kind of thinking, but there's all of these practical elements within it, such as life cycle assessment and life cycle thinking, systems thinking, the circular economy and business solutions, as well as not fun things, but are important, like environmental impact assessment and science-based targets. So putting these all together, we essentially not only have the creative tool, which is the disruptive design approach, but also the practical tools to help agentize and transform the economy, which is really what we need to do right now.
Let's finish with design. Is all design sustainable? And how do we measure sustainable design?
Yeah, so just to unpack the words sustainable and sustainability.
Yes.
So sustainable is a word that can be used to describe anything that can essentially maintain itself. Lots of systems in nature are sustainable. People in business often want a sustainable business, meaning they generate income. Sustainability is the reference to a movement that emerged in the 80s around changing the way we design goods and services, as well as meet our needs in the economy to increase the likelihood of not unsustainable outcomes, meaning that we can't sustain ourselves. So it's really a process or a pragmatic approach that has a set of tools, including, you mentioned, sustainable design, which essentially is looking at how the impact of a product or service happens across its entire life. So every single thing that exists comes from nature, and we have to transform nature to achieve our goals. And throughout all of the stages of material production, manufacturing, transportation, use and end of life, there's touch points with the world and impacts. And so sustainable design helps us assess that and make better decisions about the materiality and delivering human needs without destroying the planet in the process. There are lots of strategies. It's really useful. It's part of the set of tools that we use in the circular economy. And of course, so I see this all as like Lego pieces. If you want to build a cute little Lego house, you need certain pieces to put together, otherwise you don't have it. And that's kind of what we're trying to achieve. And this is requiring a huge upskilling of the market right now. So there's this huge skills gap, the green skills gap, where, for example, reverse supply chain logistics manager, which is somebody who figures out how to get things back to a factory, disassemble them so those resources can be reused. And these kinds of roles are now emerging. LinkedIn just did a huge survey of different job roles, and green skills are one of the big ones that are not being met by the market. So we have a problem with academia not providing this offering. That's why I created the Unschool, to help, upskill people in their professions to understand systems thinking, sustainable design, how to respond to the ESG movement, whatever else.
Who attends the Unschool?
I think we're about 15,000 students at the moment. But actually, we're in the process of building a very similar thing for the business community called Swivel Skills, which is where we're pivoting to the green economy, right? So right now, you've got a job, you've got a skill set, you've got an expertise, but you probably don't understand some of the practical tools that can be applied to help solve some of these big issues in your business, whether that be in fashion or whether that be in automotive or some of the hard to abate industries. So we're really trying to help level up the entire kind of global workforce around not only the kind of fundamental sustainability concepts and approaches, but then also the leadership and the systems approaches that things like the DDM have helped many people apply to solving complex problems. So yeah, I think for me, it's all about transference as well. Like, we're having this conversation. Hopefully lots of people listen to it. They get excited. Yeah. They themselves then maybe start to think differently about how they can approach their challenges. They share that information. We can have that beautiful fractal change in our society so that we overcome some of the problems of the past.
Forget atoms. This is a lady that ignites every neuron in the audience. Thank you, Leyla.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
In these turbulent times, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Thinkpod for more insight and analysis.